Om Jnanatinirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurin Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Today we are celebrating the disappearance day of His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada, who we mostly know as being the spiritual master of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is a tremendous, towering Vaishnava personality. It's a very special day for all of us to remember the appearance, disappearance and empowered activities of great Vaishnavas. And this remembering Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is especially for myself a special occasion, as I spent a considerable portion of my life, of this life, researching about and writing about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur for a book which we pray that will be released within a few months. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur himself stated, Parampara Jano Bhalomate. We should know very well what is parampara. That means that we should know what is the principle of parampara, and we should also know the personalities who have actually made the chain. They have been the links in the chain of passing Krishna consciousness down through the ages. So there is a lot of service required to bring to the attention of the world the extraordinary activities and teachings of all the members of our parampara. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur appeared in this world in 1874. In English we use these words, appear and disappear, as translations of the Sanskrit avirbhav and tirobhav. We don't generally say that a Vaishnava is born. We don't use the word janma. No, generally no. And we definitely don't use the word die. Rather, the appearance and disappearance of great Vaishnavas are compared, like that of Bhagavan himself, to the appearance and disappearance of the sun. Just as the sun appears and disappears, but is not born and does not die each day, so the great Vaishnavas appear and in certain course of time disappear from this world. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur appeared in this world in 1874 in Puri Dham as the son of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who was also a vast, towering figure in the history of Vaishnavism. It's a great job that we as the followers of these great devotees, we have to bring to the attention of the world who are these great personalities. So there are so many incidents that can be described. Maybe this evening I'll give more of what could be called a biographical overview. How, just I can summarize now, how from the very beginning of his life, the young child who was named Bimala Prasad showed all the symptoms of a great devotee. And even in his childhood, youth, all through his life, there was never any symptom of him being anything but a great devotee of Krishna. Although in his childhood and youth he was a brilliant, a prodigy in mathematics and astronomy, but that never detracted from his intense devotional service to Krishna. So he, although he was apparently the son of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he acted more like the disciple of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. The relation between them was never like that of an ordinary, mundane father and son. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is famous as he was called the Lion Guru. Actually, the term, in ISKCON we say but the actual term given in the literature about him is Acharya Kesari. Do you have this word in Tamil also, Kesari?
Some people...
Kesari means lion. It's a synonym of lion.
In Canada
it's common.
Sanskrit.
Sanskrit, of course. Singha and Kesari, or Keshari, are both mean lion. So, he was known as the Lion Guru for his forceful attacks on everything that was not pure devotional service. And especially he attacked all misrepresentations of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. At that time, in the name of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so many bogus people were doing so many bogus things. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur stood against all of this. And you finished? And he also stood very strongly against Mayavad, impersonalism. And like I said, against everything that was not pure devotional service. He was also a great opponent of Adhyokikta, which is a Bengali translation of a Sanskrit word which can be translated in English as empiricism.
Yes.
Empiricism. It means pratyakshabad, I suppose is another way of saying it. That you only believe what you see. Which is the basis of modern so-called science. So he would always point that beyond the range of our senses is the transcendental. Achintya khalu ye bhava natangs tarkena yojayet prakritebhyo parang yachta tad achintyasya lakshanam. The very characteristic of that which is achintya, inconceivable, is that it is not within the scope of human reason. So it is useless to try to understand the transcendental by mundane intellectual efforts. As he would say, it is like trying to place an elephant on a plate. The example is apt. Plate is not very big, and an elephant is very big. So it is not possible to put something very big into something very small. So in the same way, the subject matter of Krishna is far greater than our tiny little brain power. Regarding brain power, even from the mundane point of view, his intellectual capacity was extraordinary. As I was saying, practically from his childhood, he was a brilliant prodigy in astronomy, which is based on mathematics. Nowadays, for engineering or physics or astronomy, all the calculations are done by computer, which makes the brain dull, actually. But traditionally, one could not begin to approach these sciences unless one had a very good grasp of mathematics. An ability to work out various calculations in the head.
Please repeat it.
And previously one could not even begin to approach such sciences unless he had a very good grasp of mathematics. And the often complex calculations had to be done personally. So at the age of 15, Bimala Prasad, that was the name given to him by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, was awarded the title Siddhanta Saraswati for his excellence in astronomy. This title demonstrates one who is highly favored by Saraswati, highly learned, especially in Siddhanta. There are various branches of learning. Siddhanta means the conclusion of any the proper conclusion of any theoretical science. It's not such easy discussion, is it? It means the confirmed conclusion of any theoretical science or theoretical concept. And it's a term that is particularly used in astronomy. Later, that name became extended to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, which gives a whole different connotation to that of being an expert in astronomy. This word Siddhanta is also of vital importance in Bhakti. So those who conferred on him the title Siddhanta Saraswati for astronomical excellence, they could not have known that of the real Siddhanta that he had come to this world to teach. Usually such a title would be, you wouldn't get it at the age of 15, you'd have to be like a really, one who is to be awarded such a title, one had to be highly accomplished in any discipline of learning. But Siddhanta Saraswati, although he was the age of an average student, but he was already teacher to many people older than him. So we could say that those who bestowed on him this title, it may be something like Agni Dev presenting to Krishna the Sudarshan Chakra, which is his eternal weapon. It was not that by their blessing he became Siddhanta Saraswati. He is always fully replete with all knowledge of Siddhanta. What is Siddhanta? Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. The Siddhanta is, what are the principal Siddhantas summarized by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Dashamula Siksha, his foundational teachings in 10 points. So these anything we start to speak about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, if we start to speak more, then already that'll be a 5-hour lecture. Anything we start to speak about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, if we start to speak in more detail, that will become, just on some detail, that will become a 5-hour lecture. And of course this Dashamul, these 10 points, that's not even 5 hours, that's all your life to discuss these things. So we do discuss these 10 points all the time within ISKCON, but generally not in a formal or systematic manner. I'll just give the first two, then you can understand what kind of points these are. That knowledge and understanding is transmitted through and to be understood through the system of Guru Parampara based on Shastra. Amnaya Praha-tattvam. All that is summarized in 3 words. That the Amnaya, the Shastric knowledge, broadcast through the Guru Parampara, that speaks of tattva, or that establishes what is tattva. Amnaya, or the system of knowledge, the knowledge that is given through the Guru Parampara based on Shastra, that describes what is tattva, or reality. So the first point of tattva is Harir Eha Paramam. Lord Hari, He is supreme. So like this, if we are to discuss Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, then there's so many philosophical points, and very deep and with many subtleties, which is one reason why my book on him I've been working on it for more than 27 years now. I hope that it will, upon its publication, it will encourage others also to go deeper into Bhaktisiddhanta. Because Bhaktisiddhanta is not simply a name, but this term gives us a whole view on reality, which Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur himself termed Drig Drishya Vichar. Drig Drishya Vichar. He said that everything he taught is based on this Drig Drishya Vichar. It means consideration of who is the seer and who is the seen. Generally we think, I went to the temple and I saw the form of the Lord. I saw the Vigraha. But the proper understanding is that He is the seer, we are to be seen by Him. He is the enjoyer, we are to be enjoyed by Him. Due to not understanding these points, everything that goes on in the world is simply a disaster. And even that which goes on in the name of religion is just a covered method of self-indulgence. So generally people like to hear stories. Maybe all this stuff is pretty difficult. I think the professor is also out of practice for translating, and all of a sudden you get this, so maybe I'll tell some stories and that'll be easier for you all. Yeah, of course, Srila Prabhupada, our own Srila Prabhupada, made everything very easy for us. The teachings of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur were presented in a very complex language and very complex concepts. And Srila Prabhupada presented the same thing, but in a very easy way. So they both serve the same purpose. There's no difference between the teachings of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada and Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. But the manner of presentation is different. It's like Prabhupada himself said that I like to hear my Guru Maharaj. I couldn't always understand what he was saying, but still I would sit and listen. Regularly, after his lectures, all the disciples would come to one of his disciples, namely Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, and ask, and then he would explain the same lecture to them in words that they could, in terms that they could understand. Sridhar Maharaj. He could catch what he was saying and express it in simpler terms. Or one there are so many points. The manuscript I prepared is about 1,500 pages, and it's just an introduction. Yeah. So one major point is also that he was, at least from the external point of view, highly innovative in presenting Krishna consciousness. He accepted sannyas in 1918 at the age of 44. Prior to that, for the previous 17 years, he had been living in Mayapur an extremely austere life. Tapascharya, do you say?
Pardon?
Tapascharya, austere, we say. Tapasya. Tapa. And for just over 9 years before accepting sannyas, he had been observing a vow. The vow was to chant the Shatakoti Nama Japa Vrata. That means to chant 100 crores of the holy names. That means he was chanting, we chant 16 rounds a day minimum, right? So 4 times that is 64, and 3 times that is 192. So he was chanting 192 rounds, 3 lakhs of names every day. He did that for over 9 years. He was living in the jungle of Mayapur. At that time, now if you go to Mayapur, it's become like a small town. But at that time, there was just one very small temple at the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Present temple, at the birthplace, that wasn't constructed till 1927, I believe it was. Later, one of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disciples. There were no roads. There was you'd have to hire a boat. There are different ways of going, but whatever it was, it involved walking over the fields. So he was living a very austere life, and then he accepted sannyas. But surprisingly, shortly after he accepted sannyas, he left, it might seem surprising, that he left Mayapur and came to Calcutta. You think that a sannyasi would leave the big cities and go to the quiet places. He was already in a quiet place, Mayapur. And even his accepting sannyas was highly controversial, because there had been practically no sannyasis in the Gauriya Sampradaya since the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And all of the Gauriya sannyasis at the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they were actually initiated by, it appears that they were initiated by Mayavad rites. The only exception being Prakashananda Saraswati, who was initiated in Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. So anyway, he came to Calcutta, which is a big materialistic city. And eventually he established the Gauriya Math. It's amazing, I've been speaking about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur for half an hour, and it's the first time I mentioned the Gauriya Math, which is inseparable from him. Just like we can't think of Prabhupada without ISKCON, and we can't think of ISKCON without Prabhupada, so we can't think of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati without the Gauriya Math, or vice versa. Later on, our Prabhupada, he had some disagreement with his godbrothers in the Gauriya Math.
Prabhupada got disagreement.
Yeah, because he said that they lost the spirit of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, which was one of very powerful preaching. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada started ISKCON separately. Although unfortunately, due to infighting, the Gauriya Math itself had split into innumerable branches. But anyway, ISKCON is founded to continue the teachings of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was the founder of the Gauriya Math. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was the founder of the Gauriya Math, which during his presence was a very powerful, dynamic preaching movement. Now, I said I was going to tell some stories. Well, there are so many. Mostly they all have philosophical import. When he was a young boy, just maybe about 4 years old, his father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, brought some mangoes home.
Fruits.
Mambalam. Yeah. And that young boy, just a young toddler, he took one and ate it. So when Bhaktivinoda Thakur saw this, he admonished him, said that nothing should be eaten without first offering to Giridhari. So Giridhari, they were worshipping Govardhan, Shila, in the Giridhari Shila, in the home of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Not Shaligrama.
Govardhan.
So then the young boy, just a little tiny boy, said, "Oh, I have committed a great offense." And he vowed on the spot never again to eat mango in his life. Please go wash your hands. Don't put on your mouth. Yeah. Tell not to put their hands on the mouth. And don't touch anything else with your hands on the way out, which he's just doing. Yeah, he was, from his childhood, he was very bold. There was one reputed sadhu who visited, he and Bhaktivinoda Thakur came into the presence of. So the normal culture is that young boys are trained whenever they see any superior, especially a sadhu, they bow down, they offer dandavat. But this boy didn't do. So when Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the sadhu asked Bhaktivinoda that why your boy, he doesn't bow down, why he's not following this etiquette. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur replied that he has taken a vow to remain at a great distance from, and not offer respect to sahajiyas. Which means false devotees. Once when he was at college, during his college days, he went with some others to visit the place of Ishvar Chandra Vidyasagar, who was a famous professor of Sanskrit and had also at some point taught Bhaktivinoda Thakur some details of Sanskrit. So the conversation turned to the point of religion and God. So at this point, the Pandit, he wanted to, we don't want to talk about this. He said, I don't want to say anything about God because if I don't know who he is and I say something about him that is not correct, then it's better that we don't say anything. So the young man, Vimala Prasad, then challenged him. Sawal, you have the book Hare Krishna Sawal. So then why did you write in you published one book, and in that book you wrote that Ishvara is without any form or qualities or personality. You wrote that Ishvara has no form or qualities or personality. He pointed out the hypocrisy that he was saying, I would rather not speak anything about him. But in his book, he had given the atheistic statement. So that God has no form, qualities or activities. So he challenged everyone who was not in the line of pure devotion, which earned for him being expelled from the Sanskrit college in Calcutta. Practically he was expelled. He left, but if he hadn't left, he would have been expelled. Because the teachers couldn't tolerate that he was always pointing out the defects in the various atheistic things they were saying. Anyway, I'll tell some more things this evening about this great devotee of Krishna. This great devotee of Krishna, whose great love for Krishna was manifest at his intolerance of anyone doing or saying anything which was against the principle of Krishna consciousness. So now we'll perform the Pushpanjali ceremony. Then after that there will be Bhog offering and Arati and distribution of prasad.